All righty, we're live here at the Unlikely Agent Podcast. I am joined with one of my best friends in the world, and it's just really cool to have you, man. Steve Hawks,
Thanks,
live
brother.
in person.
Thank you.
How are you?
Pretty good, brother.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for joining me today.
100%.
So for those that don't know Steve, and that's probably a very small list out there, Steve is the man when it comes to Las Vegas real estate. He's been innovating and just doing real estate at a very high level. I've been in the industry since 2015, and I remember just driving up and down the street, seeing your billboards, bus stops, and just knowing all about you before I even got into the business. And it's kind of surreal just, doing this right now. And I get to work across from you. It's really cool. So
thanks, brother. Thank you.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about yourself, how you got started, like just everything about Steve Hawks, getting into real estate and just all that.
So, in the beginning, it was the bus stops. That's what started. And so when I first started, I came here from California. And I was living basically 10, 15, 20 minutes from the beach. I grew up out in that area. So I was working for a company called Airborne Express. It was like FedEx, and the district sales manager. And they said, hey, go to Vegas, open it up. And then I don't want to go in the middle of the desert. I'm from the beach area. I don't want to deal with all that nonsense. And who wants to live in the desert? So I came out here, and they said for 6 to 8 months, and then I could go back if I opened up the area. So short story, I'm here for about 8 months to a year. My buddy's doing mortgages. He's like, hey, why don't you do real estate? And I used to do an intern at commercial real estate for Marcus Millchap at the World Trade Center in Long Beach. So I had a little bit knowledge. And so I went to I took the test. He's like, go do it. Trust me. And I go, okay, whatever. But I never wanted to be that was never my plan to be a real estate agent. I mean, I had no desire to do it. But with my job, I had a lot of free time on my hands because once you met your numbers, it didn't make sense the way they did the sales to go above it. So once you hit your numbers to go above it, you had to meet that budget next month. So it didn't make sense. So I said, okay, whatever. And took the test, and it was just as easy back then as it is today. So Randy Van Rinken is the school I took over on Sunset and Eastern somewhere. Yeah, Sunset and Eastern. Or Warren Springs and Eastern, right by that park, Sunset Park. Anyways, it was like the most popular one back then. Got my license, and then
What year was that?
probably 98, I think,
Okay.
somewhere late 90s. So I got my license, and then the mortgage guy, and then I worked for this company, and then this guy that did mortgages said, hey, the guy that I met through Airborne, because I was doing packages for him, they were a big client, one of his businesses, and he also did mortgages. So that's how I got into it. So he gave me some people to take out in the car. So the first thing I learned on, and it was a 2-page or 3-page contract back then. And so I go, hey, I found this guy a house. What do I do? He's like, I'm not sure, man. So he sent me over, because it was an 80-20 seller carryback. And I was a finance guy, so it was still difficult to understand at first. He just sent me a contract, and he's like, yeah, copy that one. So I, copied it and sent it over, and the agent's name was Russ something. I forget his last name, but he was a popular realtor back then. And the first deal was an 80-20. And then I did that for a little bit. Then one of our other friends opened up a Century 21 Distinctive, worked there for a little bit. First year real estate, I did 87 deals. My first year. 87 deals your first year? Yeah, the first 12 months.
Oh,
and it was a lot easier back then. It wasn't, they put all this crap on now that's, the contracts were 2 pages. The SRPD was 2 or 3 pages. There was a lot of new homes back then. There was probably 60 or 70 new home builders. So the consumers really needed you to know the area, because they couldn't go on the internet and find it, right? They needed you.
Yeah.
So a lot of new home sales. I did a lot of new home sales. Probably half of were new home sales. And then the second year, I did 180 transactions with Century 21. I was the #1 agent in the Southwest region. For Century 21 my second year. And I didn't want to do real estate. And I had the advantage because I had a company car and I had a cell phone and I had a laptop. So all my gas was covered. I had no expenses. And then I paid, I split the a full page ad in the yellow pages. So that's how I got my, all my leads that's how I got a lot of my leads I paid a lot of money for a full page in the yellow pages. I split it with the mortgage guy. and it was $2,500 each. So it was $5,000 for that, and we just got a killing. And then with that, I started doing the real estate books, all that, did that, and then the bus stops. And then I didn't have my picture on my card, and everyone's like, "Oh, you got to put picture on a card." I go, "I ain't put my picture on my card, man. I'm going back to California anyways. I ain't gonna be here that much longer."
Huh.
And then so I was working my other job, and then also so for the first 2 years I did all that working Airborne Express too. I had 2 jobs for 2 years at the same time, and then it was an award, a sales award ceremony or whatever in Florida that I had to go out there, and that week I was going to make more money in real estate than I was all year at the other place. And I'm like, man, I can't, and if I cancel, they're going to know something's up, because they already offered my a bunch of promotions to go back to Santa Barbara, to go back to California, to get, because that's what they said they would do, and that's what I wanted when I came out here. Then I'm like, oh, you know what, this is a lot of people coming out here, whatever. So even if I don't sell another house, I'm still good for the rest of the year, right?
Yeah.
Because I still knew, I'm like, this can't, So I resigned from there, so I wouldn't get fired, because I knew something was going on. Plus, one of my bosses came out and saw the book with my picture on it. He's like, I don't care what you do, bro. Just as long as you're making your numbers, do whatever you want. Yeah. And so then after that, I just did real estate full time, and that's how I started in real estate from there.
That's wild.
Yeah.
To do those numbers out the gate, like, I can't even imagine. My first year, I think I did like 4. And my second year, I did like maybe 10. Third year, I kind of got going. But like to hit it at 87, and then you said 180 your second year?
No assistant.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you got to remember, there was no HOA packages. There was the SRPD was 2 pages. There was no, chasing leads.
Yeah.
When you met, I had a yellow piece of paper, a yellow book, whatever, those notepads. And every time I met someone, I wrote down their name and number and what they wanted. You memorized what the people wanted, because like if you saw something, oh, that would fit so-and-so, because, now we don't have to memorize that thing. It's all we don't, right. Hey, what's that client want? Oh shit, I can't remember. You got to go look. Back then, what's that client want? He wants this. He wants this. And then when, if someone had a fax machine, it was like a great thing, right? Because you could fax them at 5. You could fax them the stuff during the day that you found for them.
Yeah.
So it was a lot. There was things that took a little bit longer, but there was things that made it a lot easier. Like the stuff that took longer back then, but we didn't know it took longer, because like if you had a contract signed, right, you had to wait. It sometimes took 3 or 4 days, because you had to get it back from that person, and then those people are at work. So it's not like I got the contract and these people, so I got to meet them, have them sign it after they get off work. If they have a fax machine, great. But back then, a lot of agents, like I did, I presented a lot of the contracts to the seller so I could get everything to sign it right there. That's when it was really negotiating. People say, oh, I negotiate stuff now. No, you don't. You send it to the other agent. Who knows if that other agent knows what they're doing? Most of the time they don't, as we all know. Yeah. Back then, you really negotiated, because the seller was right there. Yeah. So I'm talking to the seller. Seller's like, what about this comp? What about that comp? Yeah, this. Oh, what is your buyer? So it was really negotiating right there. I mean, you're not, the other agent's just sitting there. You're talking with the seller. And Kevin Gaforia taught me a lot of stuff. That's why I started with the Central and Instinctive. Yeah. So I learned a lot from him. And so did Diana Glassman. So that's where we learned a lot. So that helped a lot too, because he was cutting edge too. He's always been cutting edge. We did a lot of seller carrybacks. We did a lot of owner carries, hundreds of them. So a lot of people didn't know it. My finance background helped me on that, because I knew how the 80/20s. Back then, I still had the calculator from college that I used. Yeah. It was the HP 17B2, put all the information in there. So that's how you're able to do that. Like now you need an assistant. Look at all the paperwork, like there's like this.
Yeah.
We used to make fun about, oh, someday it's going to be a lot of pages. It was like the whole contract was like, if it was just accepted, a lot of times there was no counters because the seller's right there, or it was 1 page. The whole contract was like 4 or 5 pages. That's it. That's it. There was none of this other garbage. I mean, a lot of these disclosures that we have now, it's just repeating what's in the contract. Right. It's repeating what's in the SRPD. Yeah. Oh, what about this? What about that? Well, if I didn't lie on the SRPD, I'm not going to lie on this. Why you keep on asking me for it? It's like these attorneys and the association created all this paperwork to make it look harder than the transaction really is. Yeah. Because back then, you couldn't be a part-time agent, because you had to have knowledge. You had to, there was no pictures of houses, right? So you had to know the market. You had to know the new homes. The buyers couldn't find new homes on the internet, right? Yeah. Like they do now. Zillow dominates that, right? Totally. So back then, the more new homes and more new home people you knew, the better, networking. That's when networking really mattered. So you would go to these events and it would help to know these new home builders because you could network with them. You don't need to network with new homes and realtors today. You can find all the stuff on the internet. Back then, it was essential that you did that because they would tell you what they had.
Yeah, you talk about the differences, what it was like back then. The internet obviously is kind of the biggest one. Having to have that knowledge memorized for your clients. Because you're right. Nowadays, it's just it's so much. You're just trying to take it as much as you can. You're trying to be as systematized and automated with it as possible. So you do lose that personal touch. But it's just kind of a numbers game, and that's how we operate. But I'm curious from how it was back then and how it is now. What's easier in terms of being a real estate agent? Was it harder? Was it easier back then?
Well, back then, it was easier to get a lot more referrals because nobody ghosted you. Nobody. Because you went in the car with them on the first day. Okay. If you liked them and they liked you, boom, you're set. They didn't call another realtor. They didn't go to a new home without you. And if you didn't click with them on that day, you didn't call them and they didn't call you.
Yeah.
I'm like, working those people. It was simple as that.
Yeah.
And most of the agents, 95% of the agents were full-time back then. So when I called an agent, I would say, hey, where do I need to be? It was totally professional, total easier back then when you called an agent because every single agent was knowledgeable and knew what was up. And they knew that you were going to work with that person again. If you were doing... most of the agents knew everybody because you were doing multiple transactions with them. There wasn't people that did, very few people did 1 to 5 transactions. Today, 35% to 40% from that report from Inman said that, 30 to 35% of all the transactions are done by agents that did 1 to 5 deals. No way. Back then, there was only 4,000 agents in town, right? Today, we have 17,000 agents, but only about 2,000 or 3,000 are full-time. So we had more full-time agents back then in 98, 90, 97, 98, 2000, 2001 than we do actually now, if you look at it. So that helped a lot out. That was probably the best part because and back then everyone was a professional. Oh, when I'd be out, the gym, nightclubs, whatever. Oh, you're real estate? Hey, can I ask you a question? Oh, because we were treated as professionals then, right? And then, after the crash, that changed because NAR and MLSs started going for quality instead of quantity. So 2009 is when the quantity came and they threw out the quality. And that's when we had to adapt, but that's another segment. But to your question about what makes it easier is most people don't even know what a Metro map is. So if the night before, it took me 30 to 45 minutes to schedule the appointments because I would have to map them out. Every property would have a number. So you'd go on the Metro map and you would follow that and you would have to map out everything. So that would take 30 to 45 minutes. Today, someone could call me and I don't even, 2 minutes 30 seconds before I leave, I just put the address in the phone.
Right.
And it's like that. The DocuSign. So DocuSign makes it, people have no idea how much easier that is because you had to wait for people to get off work. You had to do this. So it took 3 to 5 days to get everybody's schedule, everybody, the contract. You had to drive it there. They had to come to your office. Oh, hey, my wife can sign today. I can sign tomorrow. Okay, here, give it to the wife. Take it, bring it back to me. I'll come pick it up. That's 24, 40 hours right there. And same thing on the other time. That's why we went there to present it. Kevin told me that. Present every offer. Get it done right there and there because time is not on your side. But today, DocuSign. There's people, hold on. I get my break from dealing 21 at 10 o'clock. I'll go sign it. And so they sign it in 5 minutes. I have it back at 10 p.m. at night. The other agent has it. Boom. Everything can get done within, you can literally get a contract done in 45 minutes from presenting in a couple counteroffers. Everyone has access to the DocuSign. So that, the phone, obviously the internet, the internet is a blessing and a curse because as soon as Zillow Realtor.com came out, 80% of my job was over. I didn't have to search homes anymore.
Yeah.
I didn't have to, we do, but back then, before that, you had to. You had to know everything that was out there. You had to know about the new home. You had to know what the floor plans were. You had to go, you had to know the neighborhoods. You had to know what schools were good. What is the crime statistics? What is all that stuff, right? You don't need that anymore.
Yeah.
Because they already know it. And they know it more than you do because they're looking at that, that small area of town, that 5 to 10 block area. They're looking at it every single day for 6 months. Okay. They know more about that than you could ever, because we have to know the whole valley. We can't sit there for 6 months and know. And for sellers, back then, sellers like, hey, what's my house worth? Well, here's what this one sold for. Here's what this sold for. And your house is worth this much. Okay. Thank you. Today, well, what do you think my house is worth? They tell you, well, here's the comp. So I don't think that's right, because my house is worth this much, and here's why. That house over there sold because of a divorce. That one over there, they had a job transfer, and they have all that information now, right? So the seller knows more about, most of the time, I mean, there's few, but because of the internet and Zillow and all that information, the sellers know more than the listing agent does about why the house is sold for that price. Not all sellers, but most sellers, if you go to, when you're talking to these sellers, they'll tell you, oh yeah, that house sold under market because of this or that, or that one sold above market because they sold it to the son, they gave them cash back. They know the intricacies of the houses sold. Back then, they didn't know what house sold in the area, and else the sign went up, okay? And they only knew the house that sold, like, that they saw, right? And if in their thing, they didn't know about the house that sold 4 blocks over. Now they do.
Yeah.
They know all that information. And they ask the neighbors, hey, why'd that house sell? Who's they selling? Back then, they didn't that. Your word was gold back then. And that's, a lot of the laws that are done today, they are kind of redundant, because back then that's why dual agency back then was frowned on, because the consumer, you could really, get over on the consumer back then.
Yeah.
A lot of people could. You can't do that today. You can't get over on the consumer today. So the dual agency is not a bad thing today like it was back then, because today the consumers know what their house is worth. The buyers know what that house is worth. Back then, you could take off a comp on a house and say, yeah, your house is only worth $450 because look, that one sold for $450, that one's $420, and you take off the $550 and $575.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So that's how that's why dual agency was frowned upon back then, because a lot of unscrupulous people would get away and do that. You can't do that today. Yeah. So, this thing about dual agency, you can't hide nothing. There's nothing to hide anymore, folks.
Yeah.
So that's a big difference. And, with like today, there's a lot of part-time agents. The reason why part-timers can flourish so much is because they don't have to be searching for houses.
Yeah.
That was 80% of our time. So now, instead of searching for houses, and working with clients, people that 80% of the time, people have gone to prospecting. You didn't have to prospect as much back then.
Yeah.
I mean, once you went out, you met, you could network, and then you took care of those people, and there wasn't a lot of realtors. So once you closed a deal, you would get 4 or 5 referrals from that person all day long, especially the new homes that came in from California, because there were so many people come from California. You would get those referrals because, today you sell a house to someone and their friend would refer you someone, but their friend didn't know that person was even looking. So that person's looking on the portals and, oh, I already found the house without the realtor. I got a good realtor. Oh, shoot, I already got it. Back then, oh, I'm going to buy a house too. Oh, yeah, call my guy. Okay, I'll call him, because they couldn't look for houses without me.
Yep.
So that person would send me 4 or 5 referrals. Well, that person would still send you 4 or 5 referrals today. It's just that this person has already started the process before they told that person.
Yeah.
And they don't need that process to start. So those are some things that it saves time, but it also costs you more time, because now you have to prospect more, because you don't get as many referrals from those people, because those people don't know when their friends and family are starting the process like they did in the past.
Yeah, you touched on something that I tell my team quite a bit. It's a theory, but the ghost rate is, obviously, you mentioned, significantly higher these days. Ghost rate, I mean, like, you meet a client, you hit it off, y'all could be best friends, you're jamming out to the car music, everything while you're looking at properties. And then the next day, they don't return a call. The following day, nothing. And then 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, they have just completely vanished. They're no longer interested in working with you. And you're sitting there scratching your head thinking, what did I do wrong? And my theory is, and I think, where people get excited, because initially they do. You'll become you'll get on our radar is when you're on Zillow or when you're inquiring on our website, so that we'll be the first one to get in front of you. But then they get excited, and then they tell their friends, oh yeah, we're shopping. And then their friends say, hey, I've got a great agent. You got to chat with them. At that point, unless you've really connected with them deeply, they're going to leave. They're going to take that referral all day from a friend that's vetted them already, that had a good experience with them. So that's always been like what I think. But like you said too, there's so many freaking agents. There's 17,000 compared to 4,000 back then. The options are endless, and we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. If they're offering X% of their commission with, some sort of like rebate. If, for what they just found out that their best friend got licensed, which is quite common. So it is interesting how people just ghost you at such an alarming rate. It's like, it's disrespectful as all hell, but that's just 2023 for you.
Yeah, but that's realtors and portals' own fault, because we cause that ourselves by not building relationships with people. And yeah, so they found us, they find me, they find you, they find an agent on what? A portal, whether it's Zillow, Realtor.com, Redfin, PPC, HomeLight, whatever.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? 90% of the time now, before it was 100% of the time, that lead got 3 agents. Or worse yet, they went to Realtor.com and another portal. Now they're getting 9 text messages, 9 phone calls, 18 emails the first 3 hours.
Yeah.
And then the next day and the next day. So like, I ain't calling nobody. And then they forget who they talked to in the beginning.
Yep.
Because they are being bombarded. Now, now that this is almost like the second generation, a lot of people are buying their second home or having a second transaction since all this started. So now it used to be, first one, speed to lead is number. Well, that not as good anymore, because now there's so many people bombarding them. They go, what the hell happened? I mean, like the expireds, it's not just the expireds that get bombarded. Like Mike Ferry said the other day, one of the reasons why he gave 5 reasons why there was low inventory. And one of them said, we got to prospect more. I'm like, whoa, bro, prospect more. People are prospecting so much that the attorneys are suing them, not just because of do not call, because of harassment. I mean, you have companies that are contacting the consumer 100 times in one day, because they have 50 to 100 agents calling that same person. They have 50 to 100 agents from that same office calling that same person, that same buyer, that same seller. Look what happens with these consumers that get a loan. They get called like 60 or 70 times once they got their credit pulled. Well, it's same thing with people looking for houses. So they don't, and that doesn't stop. So they just, I mean, if someone's contacting you, if you're getting 60 text messages and 60 phone calls, you're just gonna go, who is this? Who do I,
I'm shutting down.
Yeah. So you have to really, and then on the second, I think this is gonna backfire in the portals. 2 years ago, I thought this was a genius idea that, they were telling us, me too, I buy leads from portals too, and they say, hey, when they call you, in the past, we would pre-qual them. And then if they're pre-qualified, I'll show you the house. Well, for now on, when they call you, no matter what, you just go out there, meet them at the house and build that relationship and try and get a referral. Well, now that's changed the consumer's idea, like it's an open house, like it's a 24/7 open house. So now when they call us on the internet, they expect us to meet them at the house, not asking about their credit, not asking about anything. Let me see the house. Okay, I'll get back to you. And they'll call someone else because it's almost like an open house. I get a lot of calls now that people said, oh yeah, my realtor's busy. Can you show me the house? I'm not even a listing agent on the house. They just called me from the ad. And because they've been programmed because they see the commercial that say, hey, get a free tour of this house. Come get this, come see this house. Not come buy this house, come get a tour of this house. Yeah. Well, how many people go into new homes just to tour, just to look at them? A lot. So we don't even know if these people are serious when they ghost us. And ghosting, I mean, yeah, you're right. The last, 24 to 36 month ghosting is like 1,000 times more than it was in the past. Nobody even got ghosted back in the late 90s, early 2000s. It didn't happen. It didn't, like I said, it just started happening like 4 or 5 years ago.
Wow. Interesting. I guess lucky us.
Yeah.
I'm curious because you had mentioned, and you're right, when people go on Zillow, with the internet is where they have the ability to locate their own property. They have a general idea, often more so information on like what's going on within their own neighborhood as far as like, figuring out a price to list for. With that being said, they can locate their own homes. They can price their own house. Why do they need a real estate agent?
Well, a lot of them are starting to ask that, right? They need a real estate agent. It's still a complicated process for now, but people are starting to figure it out when they see these realtors that aren't as knowledgeable as them doing the transaction. So you need a good realtor. You need a knowledgeable realtor to make the process better and to know what's going on, right? Because you don't want to, like, I take my car in to get the oil change. I could do it myself, right? But it's more time saving and economical to have them do it, right? Now, if they were charging me, $1,000 to change my oil or $5,000 to change my oil, then that might be, and the guy's like, hey, Steve, what kind of oil do you use? Hey, Steve, where do you check the oil?
Okay.
Hey, Steve, I've never done this before. What kind of oil? Now, I'm not going to pay that guy $100 to do it, right? Well, that's what the people are doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'll be more than happy to pay someone $100 to do it. That I take it in, boom, hey, we put this synthetic oil in there. We had to put the washer on because it was leaking a little bit, boom, boom. So it's a big difference. So when people say, do you need a realtor? No, you need a good realtor. In the past, 95 to 98% of the realtors are good. Now we know NAR's own danger report, which is coming up, that there is too many agents that are not good and not knowledgeable. But a good agent will make the process much easier and more confident that you don't have to worry about, am I going to get a deal? Am I overpaying for the house? What are the paperworks? Am I going to get sued later on? Am I going to get all those questions get answered with a good realtor? The problem is with the poor realtors or the unknowledgeable realtors, they don't. And that is opening the consumer's eyes to like, hey, wait a minute. How is this process working when you have somebody like this? Like my friend just got his license, and I know my friend. My friend don't know nothing, and they just made $100,000 selling homes. How the hell did that happen? Mm-hmm. That's happening a lot, right? There's a lot of people make a lot of money that aren't very knowledgeable because they get the transaction coordinator. So we can go on that, but that's the problem they're having right now. And these commission lawsuits, they didn't really start because the commissions were too high or they thought they were getting, overpaying. What the problem was they were overpaying for the realtor that they hired. Mm-hmm. And they're like, wait a minute, why? I don't mind paying that for that, but for this, why is it the same price when this guy has 20 years experience or 5 years experience and, he sold 100 homes. This guy sold 2 homes, doesn't know what he's doing. I had to fill in the contract for him or he didn't fill a contract out for him. I mean, look at today. In a competitive market, you need a good realtor, especially if you're a buyer on multiple offers, because if that agent is shaky, we tell the seller, hey, you know what? That offer is a little bit more, but who knows how the buyer is strong because their agent's a fool. Mm-hmm. So you know what? They might offer you a little bit more. We don't know if their loan's approved. That could be, this guy didn't even fill out the contract right. So if he didn't fill out the contract right, I can guarantee you what else he didn't do. He or she didn't qualify the buyer. Mm-hmm. So that's why you need a good realtor in this market, because if not, it could cost you getting a house or not getting a house. And on the seller side, it could cost you tens of thousands of dollars. So if a buyer has a good agent and a seller has a poor agent, there's a good chance that buyer is going to get over on that seller. Mm-hmm. We had an agent that closed a $3 million transaction, and a perfect example. It was this is a good example of a lot of things. So this agent only had closed like 4 or 5 deals. It was a $3.1 million listing and had no clue. I mean, it was just like a perfect example of what's going on in our market where the seller just hired someone that they knew for whatever reason, and it cost that seller. So who knows how much it cost? It cost them at least $60,000 or $70,000, right? So that's why you want to hire a good realtor.
Do you think that seller that lost like that 70, are they aware of it, or they're just, their house got sold, they're just thinking, oh, my real estate agent did a good job knowing that how much money was left on the table?
Probably not. They probably didn't know because, I mean,
how could you?
Well, but go look at all these multi-million-dollar homes and these luxury homes that are listed by people that are new, or don't have a lot of experience. So that shows that the consumers think that we're all a commodity.
Yeah.
I mean, NAR, who's the best marketing company of all time?
Amazon.
Maybe. Yeah. I say NAR and the local MLSs, because they got all these consumers fooled that all the realtors are the same.
Yeah.
They got, they got all the consumers thinking that we're all a commodity. Call a realtor. Look at all these commercials we see. Call a realtor, call a realtor. It doesn't say call a good realtor, right? Yeah. It says call a realtor. So the consumers just assume that everybody's the same. And unfortunately, the consumers know what 8, 9 realtors, and there's a 90% chance that 8 to 9 of those realtors aren't very knowledgeable.
Mm-hmm.
We know that firsthand. 65%, this is from Inman News, or no, it's Mike Ferry thing. 65% of the agents haven't done a transaction in the last 12 months.
That's insane. How does the consumer get that information on, I guess, what is a good agent? You could go on Zillow, you could look at their past sales. I mean, you could trust with your family and friends. But why is that? Because obviously with 17,000 agents or so, and the amount of part-time agents that we have, some of them are, getting by, they're making money, they're doing business. So I'm wondering like what that looks like for the consumer to protect themselves. What kind of, lengths can they go through to ensure that they're actually going to get a good real estate agent?
Well, that's one thing that the local MLSs have been good at, is hiding that information from the consumer. Look, they want as many agents as possible. They don't want, for their business model, they want quantity, right? So you don't want one agent that does 100 deals. You want 100 agents that does one deal, right? And a lot of these franchises, when I owned a franchise, they said same thing. You want a lot of agents that do a few deals. You don't want a lot of whales, right? Because you don't make as much money on them for other reasons. And I didn't like that. I'm like, look, I want the best agents. I don't need to make money off these agents. I do transactions. I want to help an agent do a lot of transactions. Putting walls on harms them. But that's how you get a lot of agents. And with the commission so high, if you're doing 1 to 2 deals a year, you're going to keep paying your $1,000, $1,200 a month or whatever, or $1,200 a year NAR, whatever it is, and $100 for your MLS, and keep your other job. So it's perfect. I mean, look, there's 1.6, 1.7 million. And like I said a year ago, people thought a lot of realtors are going to go away. I said, no. I think I was talking to George. These realtors aren't going to go away. NAR and the local MLSs learned their mistake in 2008, 2009. So many agents left back then because we were all full-timers. So like, oh, I'm not doing this no more, so I'm out. Well, this time they realized, wait a minute, we got to protect ourselves from a downturn. How can we do this? Whether they did it on purpose or not, I don't know. But once they learned that that this is a good business model, it was, let's bring as many people in as we can part-time. And then if something happens like this again, they're going to keep their license. And this is exactly what's happening right now. People are going to keep their license. The only way realtors will fall off is if the commissions drop, right? So if the commissions, and look, if you're an agent and you close one deal, like this girl that closed the $3 million deal. I mean, she's going to if she doesn't sell another house for the next 10 years, it still covers her cost, right?
Yeah.
And the fact that she sold a $3 million house, she's always going to renew, because it's like the lottery. Once you win big, I'm going to keep on playing, right? Same thing with real estate. Once you do a couple big sales, or once you make one good year, or let's say you have a job making $80,000 a year and you sell 4 houses, now you're doing, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And if you have a job, it's not that hard to get 4 people to buy a house with you.
That's right.
Especially if you're working with them. And once again, the consumers look at us as a commodity now. So it's hard for us to differentiate. I mean, you see all these agents that, who you hire matters, blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, but the consumer doesn't believe that.
Yeah.
The consumer thinks that we're all the same. There's some exceptions, of course, but many of the consumers think that they're all the same because, the latest statistics, 74% of all the buyers use the first person they talk to.
Yeah.
They do no research.
Yeah, and you nailed it when you mentioned they just want quantity over quality, and it's a shame because it really does tarnish the reputation of a real estate agent. I think we're like on the list of the top 10 least trusted professionals. Like there's car salesmen, I think we're just like 4 or 5 notches above them.
It's politicians,
yeah,
lawyers, and then us and car salespeople.
Okay.
Yeah, so
car salesmen are beating us now.
I think so.
Oh,
yeah.
man,
I saw that. Yeah,
it's a shame too because it's like that's kind of their position is to protect our industry and the reputation. But I get it; it's a business too. And when you're talking about $1,200 annually per agent, yeah, sure, why not? Let's just let them all in because I thought that even 8 years ago when I was getting licensed, I'm like 90 hours. Barrier of entry here is really low.
Yeah,
I knew people that were going to school for cosmetology needed like 900 hours.
Right.
That's to do hair. And I'm not knocking hairdressers, but last I checked, at least in my opinion, helping somebody facilitating $1 million or in this $3 million real estate transaction is a little bit more, I guess, of a priority of or importance to me than, somebody's bangs colors, just in my opinion. But yet they require 10 times the amount of training. And again, because it's just a numbers game, they want to get you in and they're going to spit you out. And we see 87% failure rate within 2 years. They don't they don't care. If they cared about that stat, they would make adjustments.
Right. Well, I think 2015, they got the NAR's danger report. Did any big company or NAR MLS make any changes based on that NA danger report? Not that I know of. NAR certainly didn't. In fact, they kind of pressed it down. And a lot of people think that, the reason why realtors are so unknowledgeable is because of it's easy entry level. When I started, it was just as easy. The big difference is technology and the way consumers find houses now has allowed you to be unknowledgeable because there's so much information out there. And that's one of the reasons why we have these commission trials coming up. It's like, wait a minute. So it's less knowledgeable, less work in one sense. Why are the commissions still the same? Yeah. Why is that person that's in the business for one day getting paid the same amount as that person that's been in the business 30 years? Explain that to me. Why is that person take away the 30 years. Why is that person that has no knowledge making the same amount of money as that person that studies the market, that's super knowledgeable, that does it full time, while this person doesn't do it full time, doesn't knowledge, and just opens the door? This person opened the door. This person is a good realtor. This person helped the client. This person saved the client $50,000. This person cost the client $50,000, and they're getting paid the same.
Right.
What other industry is like that?
None that I'm aware of.
Exactly. And there's more of these than there are of these.
Yeah. And it's true. The ones that are, that are competent, that do a good job, they typically, they say, and I kind of joke sometimes, they know their value. So they won't do certain things that others will do. And I'm a product. I took advantage of the fact that I knew that a lot of times the consumer didn't really vet who they were working with. And I'm talking about my first couple of years, before it was even a thing. If somebody wanted to go see a property, the standard in this industry is like, okay, I'm going to need to see proof of funds or a pre-approval letter, okay, before I get in my car, because I value my time. I'm over here like just, hey, I can't rub two coins together. I need some money. Let's figure this out. And honestly, I'm a bigger guy, so I wasn't really scared for my safety, which is a valid concern for many.
Right.
Wasn't for me. So I was like, yeah, sure, I'll go meet you.
Yeah.
And I'd meet 10 people, right? Just with this method in like a week or whatever. And 5 or 6, maybe 7 of them, it was crash and burn, right? Like I'm unemployed, credit score is 300, but then you'd get those 3 that were pre-approved and they called around and no one would show in that home but me.
Yeah.
And so that I would, again, I hadn't done any sales. I didn't have the competence or the knowledge of somebody who may have, but because I was the first to get in front of them, I ended up getting the business. And with time, of course, I got my reps in, I got educated in the field, what I mean? I would do contracts, I'd learn what to do, what not to do. And I got to where I am now. But, to your point, these people who are highly educated, they know what they're doing. A lot of times they're not willing to do certain things that these newer agents will. And, they lose a lot of business that way also.
Yeah, 100%. When I first started, so basically when I first started, they said, hey, get listings. And then after 5 to 7 years, 10 years, you don't have to do anything. You're done. All your old clients, you just get referrals, boom, 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 boom. It's just, you're done. You're retired. You just take listings and you make a boatload of money. And that was true because once you close someone, they referred you to other people and there wasn't any way to research. Well, 2009, 2010, the crash happened. And then Zillow came along, Realtor.com came along, and the old timers, and I was part of that crew too, because I was like 10 years. I'm like, oh, this is great. I've sold enough houses. I got enough referrals. I got enough database. I'm good now. And then Zillow and Realtor.com. And then that changed where those referral sources, that's when that started, where people were starting to look for houses before they would tell their friends. So your friends wouldn't be able to refer those people out. So that's when it started back then. And the older people that are people that have been in the business a while, like myself, especially the old timers that were like, oh, this is not right. I worked all this 20, 30 years. I shouldn't have to be doing this anymore. Hey, that's technology. That's your local MLS. Don't take it up with us young guys that,
right.
And I realized, so you know what? It would have been nice to lay back and take all those calls in. But if I do that, it's not going to work. So I started hitting the pavement again, started paying all this, advertising, getting that back up because I knew it was like starting over again. So anyone that was pre-2009, 2010, you still have that database, but it's not as strong as it was because they were doing their own research now.
Yeah, and that's something about you that I've, in the 8 years that I've, been able to work across you, you're always evolving, you're always changing, and that's something that sometimes we get slack for. I get a lot of people, that when I would tell people, yeah, I wouldn't ask for pre-approval, like, oh, you're stupid. I'm like, okay, I guess so.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I'm collecting all these new.
That's right.
Same thing with you. When I first got in the industry, like for those that don't know, Steve is the innovator of 1% listings out here locally.
Nationally too. Now I think we started the wave, brother.
I would believe
started
that.
the wave.
It's everywhere. Yeah, it's the thing now. People kind of scoffed at it, and now they're joining.
Yeah.
It's just the reality of it. But like, you're on the billboards, bus stops, TV commercials, everywhere. But that does come with a little bit of criticism at times. What's your position on that?
If you don't got 40 or 50 haters, you ain't doing anything right. You want to play for the New York Yankees or the San Diego Padres, right?
That's right.
Tom Brady's got a lot of haters. You got LeBron. Who do you want to be? LeBron or some nobody? Ryan Leaf.
Yep.
So the 1%. The way it started, the way I started it is, and it's about the evolving too, adapting. It's like, look, I was killing it doing new homes and doing traditional real estate to 2007, 2008. And then I'm like, hey, you know what? I started telling my clients, stop buying. This ain't right. I just sold 10 houses to someone that is not going to be able to afford those houses and they'll still rent it. And we have to sell them in 6 months, right? And that was going on. That was like the third or fourth cycle. So fast forward 2010, 2011, so from 2008 to 2010, I probably had thousands of REOs and short sales. And we had thousands of short sales, and a lot of them didn't close in the beginning. So they went back. So towards the end, around 2012, 2013, guess what they did? I had all these short sales, and they put forbearances in. So all of a sudden, they're doing forbearances, and the prices started going up, 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 up. And I'm like, oh, hey, wait a minute, man. These short sales, let's just cut this commission and close them out. I call the other realtor. I go, listen, we're cutting this. Let's close this. Who knows if we're going to get paid if we don't do it? I'm good. So everyone was cutting the commission to get that short sale closed. So then, so that's all you did back then was short sales and REOs. So the short sales, so when we sold all the short sales, there wasn't any short sales left. And I'm thinking, look how many deals we closed because I cut my commission and they cut their commission. And that gave them enough equity to the bank to not have to do a short sale and approve everything, right? We didn't need the bank approval. We could just do it by cutting that cost. And we got the title company to kick in. The lenders were kicking in because they knew that, and it was costing me money because we had to pay people, $200 a month a file or whatever, $100 a month, whatever. So it was costing me to hold that short sale for 12. Short sales were taking 12 to 14 months, right? So now you want to wait 12, 14 months for a maybe or get your money now. So agents are like, yeah. So that's how, that's what gave me the idea. Okay. So then once we sold the short sales, the traditional market came back, but there was about 120,000 homes that had less than 10% equity. So I'm like, no, there's no one to help these people. Right. And I'm like, what are we going to do? Wait. So I said, well, if I did the same thing with short sales, what I did with these 100,000 people that don't have enough equity, 10% equity, I think I'm going to kill it. So I did a couple ads and the phone started ringing. I'm like, oh, this is crazy. And then I did a Super Bowl ad, sell your house for 1%. And all hell broke loose, right? All different ways. We got like 500 calls. I was giving the listings away to people because back then there wasn't really, the CRMs had just come out. Nothing was really good. We're still doing like spreadsheets and we had the computers and a very basic CRM, but not like today where someone called, boom, track, everything would be, taken care of. So we're getting all these phone calls coming. I'm like, damn. And so I'm just giving away to agents in the office. Here, take it. I don't care. Just take it. We had so many. And then we got a lot of buyer leads off it, right? You put listings, you put the sign in the front yard and you get the listings. Yep. So then, and we were the only people doing it, right? And then about a year, 6 months later, some other agents started doing it. And then Anthony came over, he started doing it, he blew up, and people started realizing, oh, you can get buyers off it too.
Yes.
And, a lot of the realtors that were upset about it, I mean, there was people filing false complaints. Oh, you can't do that. You can't do that. I'm like, whatever, man. And I really don't care. They're going to pay your bills. And a lot of those agents still aren't even around anymore, right? Most of the agents complain. I don't care. I'm here to help the consumer. I don't care. Yeah. Go have your little realtor rallies and stuff. That's not going to get you business. What's going to get you business is helping the consumer. Yeah. How are you going to help the consumer? I'm not here for a popularity contest. I'm here to pay my bills, pay my families, and help the consumer. Because if you help the consumer at the end of the day, you're going to do well. Yeah. And you help the consumer. That's why you're doing so well. And that's what that started. And then other people started doing it. But then I realized something else. When people were calling on listings, one of the top reasons why, and today is the number one reason why people lose listings. They don't lose listings like quality agents, good agents. They don't lose deals if they're competing against somebody that is new or doesn't have experience. The problem is those people aren't calling you. So you don't get the chance to compete. You see all these real estate coaches that say, hey, when you're competing against an agent that doesn't have knowledge or that's new or it's a family, this is what you tell them. But what these coaches don't tell is not 80 to 90% of the time, you're not competing against that person because the consumers aren't calling you.
Right.
So you're not competing. So yeah, that's a nice script, but hey, what am I gonna do? Talk to the wall? I can practice this script all I want. Hey, I'm great at this script. But guess what? The consumer's not calling me. They're going direct to that family or friend.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just doing it because guess what? All the realtors are the same. That's what they've been programmed. So then I started realizing I was getting phone calls from people and they would say, hey, I got a family, I got a friend, my so-and-so does this, realtor or whatever. And they said, well, are you going to do this? Because they said they can't do it. I'm like, yeah, you know what? Yes, I'm going to do it. They can't do it for every reason. And then I started meeting people, talking. And then I would be at the kitchen table with people and they'd say, hey, my friends do. I go, listen, let me see if my friend or family would do this. And I go, listen, they're not going to be able to do it because I know the brokers aren't going to let them do it because their brokers are puppy mills and they can't make money off this 1%. They know that your friend or family is going to be out in 2 years and they got to milk them for as much as they can for that 6%. Mm-hmm. So I said, hey, do this. List with your family or friend. Here's what I'm going to do for you. Here's this. Tell them to match it and list with them. It's as simple as that. Go ahead and call them right now. So they would call them like 99% of the time. They would just call them right there. And they'd say, no, I can't do that. Because they knew their broker wouldn't let them. And I'd say, hey, their broker's not going to let them.
Yeah.
All right. And I knew this. So that's how I was able to get more market share from people that wouldn't even have called me. So it's not like I was lowering my value. Well, no, those people wouldn't have called me.
Right.
So, and those buyers, those sellers turned into buyers. They bought new homes. The database is huge. And guess what? Those people got referrals because I got a lot of referrals from these people, especially back then, because they would say, oh, who sold your house? Steve. Well, how much did you charge? 6? No, I charged me 1. Oh,
yeah.
So that's how I started getting so many referrals from these people because, oh, I know some of the charges 5. I know some of the charges 6. I was flexible on the commission. What do you want to do?
Yeah.
And then I figured out how you can sell the house with other commissions, using the MLS. So that's how that started. It snowballed. And I have a lot of realtors. I just had a big realtor the other day said, you know what? I was working at this company and they told me not to do this. And you know what's the biggest mistake I made? I should have been flexible back then because of all these people I lost that I could have gotten. I mean, the story that I tell agents coming in, there was this, these people called me and they said, hey, we saw your ad. We're in Green Valley Ranch. I saw the ad. This was like 2016. And they said, they wanted to list their house for 1%. They gave me this bill. Hey, are you gonna? Our agent said you're gonna upsell. I go, no, let's talk. Boom. Went to them. The person worked for a franchise, and I knew the franchise. I knew the broker. I knew the owner. So I already knew. Okay, this is a done deal. Yeah. And so I said, hey, call that agent right now. This is what I'm gonna do. Here's the net sheet. Here's the thing. They're not gonna be able to do it, but at least you gave them the opportunity because those I call it the family and friend buster, because that realtor can't be mad at them because they gave them the opportunity to match it. I go, so your family or friend cannot be mad at you because you offered to give them that listing if they just matched me. That's all they had to do. Yeah. So they called, I did the same thing, called the agent. This agent, dumb. This is why I say dumb. So he had a new home. They were in a new home at Richmond American, a $600,000 home. They were going to make $18,000. And then I got the listing because he wouldn't do it. They call, he's like, no, go ahead and list it with Steve. Okay. So I got that relationship. So now they're telling me they got a new home. They go, hey, can you help me with the new home? I go, no, I can't help you with that new home because he's already representing, he's taking it there. I go, where did you buy? And they told me where they bought. I go, well, yeah, that's okay. But I like these new homes right down the street here. Go check out those. My buddy's working there. Asked my buddy. So it was the U.S. Homes on right there below Seven Hills. So they went there. My buddy calls me, hey, your clients really like this house. I go, okay, write it up. So they wrote up that house. So that realtor lost about $50,000 because he wouldn't drop the commission. And they told him, hey, you know what? He's going to do it for this. We'll still pay you more, but just meet us halfway. He didn't even have to match me.
Wow.
They said, just meet halfway.
Yeah.
And he said, no, cost him about $50,000 because they canceled that new home and I got them new home and I sold their house. Over, it came out to about, if he just would have reduced it like $6,000 to $7,000, that was the difference. And so once that's where I started realizing, oh, now I can use that script that everyone's been practicing because now they're going to call me.
That's right.
And once again, same thing with listings. It's like 60, 70% of the people list with the person back then. I don't know what it is now. But they listed with the first person they called because they thought everyone was the same.
Yeah, that's something that I think agents fail to understand as bigger picture, which you see very clearly. And when you talk about, obviously, you're getting free marketing, you're getting listings in the dirt, houses that you've sold, and you're going to get a ton of referrals off of that. A lot of times these sellers are buying, I think like 2/3 of the time. I think I would talk to you and Anthony once about this before, where like, sure, we'll do 1% listings, but ultimately take home is close to like 2.7% if you factor in everything.
That's right.
Yeah. So it's just like, again, if you look at it, if you're one of those agents that just want to do one and done, one listing at 1%, you're probably not going to walk away with it saying, hey, this is a great business model. But when you scale it like you have and you see bigger picture and able to leverage it and maximize it with your marketing and then your ability to get additional business and referrals out of it, it's brilliant. I know that up close and personal because I get to see it. I watch it.
Yeah.
And the fact that you've been able to do this and manage hundreds and hundreds of listings every year, it's remarkable because it's also like, I know you've got some assistants as well, but like, man, you put in the work too. Every time I'm leaving the office, you're still there. That's been the case since I've been with Platinum. You're always putting in the work. Is it something that you generally love to do, or is it just something that just like you like to keep your mind busy?
Yeah, a little bit of both. I'm doing less now than I was, but because I get more referrals, I get more. I'm helping more agents. So when I get a listing, I'll give it to an agent to put in their name to build up their numbers to help them. A lot of times now, so I'm helping other agents. It's a part about giving back as much as you can too, and teaching other agents, changing their lives. There's a lot of agents that have come the last 5-10 years that's really changed their life by showing them this because. A lot of the brokers and companies, they're not congruent with their realtors, right? The realtors have their goals, but what their goals are, that doesn't match the goals and congruency of the broker. Like it's two different things. Like if this person's going to be successful, they're not going to make as much money. So that's where the seesaw goes, right? So I really don't care. I want agents to do the best, let the chips fall where they may, and I show them all, show a lot of them how to do it. Like a lot of agents came in. Recently a couple and said, hey, I got this opportunity, new home. If you're doing good on resales, I go take the new home right now. And now they're killing it at new homes, right? So I always give the best advice to come back to you and like that.
And you honestly do. I can say that genuinely. When I first joined Platinum, like I was just kind of a regular agent. You didn't know if I was going to amount to much. And I'd approach you every so often with like a marketing idea or like, hey, what do you think of this? And I just wanted your opinion on it. I remember this. I always tell people this. You'd be like, yeah, you want to go in? You want me to help you market with it? You'd always offer to help advertise and market. And for a newer agent on a budget, like that meant the world to me because it made me feel more secure because it's like, obviously it's not all on me, but like you're backing a play that you see because I know you've been around, you've seen a lot on the marketing side of things, but I always thought that was super cool. And you've never asked for really anything in return. You've always been an open book. You've always been such a wonderful mentor and you've always helped me literally. And sometimes I'm even asking, I wanted your opinion and you're like, yeah, what can I do to help you? You're as genuine as they come. For those that don't know, like
thanks,
you're the best. I really do love you, man.
Thanks, man.
And and to touch on that too, you talked about something that I wanted to address. Because this is like an industry thing. We joke about it quite a bit, how like deals in brokers' names that aren't theirs. What is your thought process behind this? Because I talk with my team, I take tremendous pride on if my team does a transaction, my team member, it's going under their name, meaning it's recorded. They are the agent on file who helped that buyer or seller. This may seem trivial to some that aren't aware. And it's in this industry, and Steve will touch on it. Like there's brokers and there's team leads that do it the opposite way. But I think it's super important for agents to be able to get this under their belt. They need to have these transactions. So when they go on listing appointments, when they're talking to buyers and these buyers are getting more educated and they're going to start vetting and saying, hey, what kind of business have you done? If they don't have anything, they don't have a portfolio of previously sold homes, it's going to be very challenging for them to do the business. And yet you're seeing the highest teams, the biggest brokers putting everything under one individual's name. Why is that?
Well, I learned this about, and you're right. It's back that this covers a couple things. You know, the MLS and NAR shouldn't have allowed this because it goes to the thing of making everybody a commodity, right? It's like, oh, well, the more agents you have, less transactions, they all look the same. So you're checking them out on the sites, right? And it's almost deceptive, right? Because on the code of ethics says you got to be honest. Well, if someone's going in the house and saying I sold 400 properties, no, you didn't. Like I just got a listing recently where the seller wasn't going to list with me. I said, well, why not? Well, it was a friendly guy too that I know, and he said, well, he sold more houses than you. I go, no, he didn't. He's like, yeah. I go, no. This is how many I sold. He said, yeah, look, he sold over 300. I go, no. I sold these houses. Those houses were sold by him and about 20 other people.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I go, call him right now and tell him that you didn't know that and that you were going with the person that sold the most houses, and that would be me.
Yeah.
And so he canceled the listing because that wasn't factual. He's like, oh, I didn't know that. So that's how you could go back on it too. Say, hey, that person didn't sell that house. And it works a two-way street. But it's super important for agents, especially now, to put their production in their name. Because if they don't, they're throwing their career away,
Yes.
especially now with this antitrust stuff coming up. But let's go back 6 or 7 years, 8 years ago. And Anthony is a good example of this too, because he was at the time he was thinking about too. I'm like, look, I got experience. I'm listening to these calls. I see what the consumers are doing. The consumers are looking and checking to see if they're with a reputable, good agent many times, right? Not all the time, but many times. So when they're on the phone and they're clicking a property, they're also looking at their transactions. So when you tell someone, hey, this is what I think of the market, and they go, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I've done 2 deals in 2 years. Or, oh, this guy's done 20 deals in 2 years. Okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. Okay, I'll take his advice. That's number one. Number two, why do people get ghost so much? They're not going to ghost someone many times. Then they're looking and they're like, oh, I got 10 agents calling me. This person right here has closed 10 deals, 12 deals, 20 deals. I'm going to use this person because this person has 2 deals closed or 0 deals closed. So the consumers are starting to, they have been. And I noticed that 8 years ago that the close ratio for agents that have more transaction was far better, almost triple than agents that didn't have transactions. So that's why I started putting, even sometimes I take my deals and put them in their names for new agents. So when they would get screened, that they would have a better chance of closing. Plus, when I referred deals out and they would look, they would say, oh, you're sending me someone that doesn't do any transactions.
Yeah.
No, I'm sending you an experienced agent that knows just as much as me. Okay. And now with technology, that is so important right now. And if I was an agent and I gave my transactions away the past few years, I would call the MLS and I would have them right now get those deals put back in my name, because super important right now. If these commission lawsuits come to fruition, and a lot of experts are saying that we're going to have to compete on the buyer's side like we do with the listing. So now you're going to do a buyer's agency just like a listing. So now those buyers are going to say, hey, why should I pay you this much? Wait, you haven't done any transactions. Okay, you know what? I'll use you, but I'm only going to pay you 1%, or I'm only going to pay you 0.5%. Or you know what? Let's see what kind of deal you get me, and then I'll go forward with you. Oh no, I put my deals in somebody else's name. Yeah, sure, right. Like when realtors come in and talk to us and they tell us that, we're like, yeah, maybe you did, maybe you didn't. So that's us, right? We know that. So, and a perfect example is one of our agents had Sasha, about 3 years ago. She got a call. $4.5 million lead. I did a video on it about 3 years ago. We did the video on it. Perfect example of what I'm talking about. The person called off a Zillow. It was a Zillow lead. He's talking to her. He thought she was the listing agent. Oh, I was calling the listing agent. She goes, oh, whoa. Hold on real quick. Look how my experience is compared to the listing agent. I'm going to be able to help you more based on my transactions. Look at my transactions. If she was forced to put her transactions under Anthony's name, that $4.5 million wouldn't have gone to her. He wouldn't have gone to her. So he goes, oh yeah, you are an experienced agent. Okay, I'll use you. So she was able to get a and that's just one example of many. Yeah. She was able to get that guy and close a deal with him. And that was a very big deal for both of them. Yeah. And because if she didn't have those transactions in her name, that deal. So at the end of the day, that's what happens every single day. Realtors that don't put their deals in their own name have no idea how many transactions they're losing because people are looking at it. What about when they get a referral? Hey, go use my friend Dan. Okay, I'll check out Dan. They look at Dan, they go, oh, Dan doesn't do any deals.
No.
Dan's been doing it for 10 years. Yeah, I just checked. I'm using my other friend that does deals. That's where it's hitting hard too.
Yeah.
And it happens every day. It's common knowledge. So agents need to go back and get those transactions. I see some people on Zillow and HomeLight saying my production is not correct. I put my deals under someone else's name. That's even worse, because then the consumer's going, well, why can't you put the deals under your name? Was something wrong with you? Did you do something?
Yeah.
So that's why it's super important, the most important thing going forward. And hey, maybe the commission lawsuits don't end up the way that the buyers have to compete. But even if they don't, it's still 10,000 times better to have the production in your name, because people are starting to get that. And guess what? What happens when AI comes? If AI comes and you say, hey, how many transactions does this agent do? They're going to go straight to the MLS. Yeah. They're not going to have to go to these other sites. They're going to go straight to the MLS database. This person did this many transactions. Yeah. So it's super important for agents right now to call the MLS and get those transactions put back in their name. And there's some legal reasons too that they could fight for those transactions to go back in their name.
Yeah, it's kind of deceptive. It's like a handcuff almost, because, these people, they don't think it's important initially when they're starting with a team. They're like, oh, no big deal. It's in your name, my name, whatever, as long as I'm getting paid. Fast forward 2-3 years later, when they're maybe looking at, they're unhappy and they've done 30, 40 transactions, they're looking to leave, and it dawns on them, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to start over. Yeah. When I leave and go somewhere else, no longer do I have a team that's providing me leads. I thought I had a book of business that I could lean in on and say, hey, this is kind of my experience. I don't have that now. Right. That's gone. And so, yeah, to what you just said, it's super important that you put deals under your own name. It's something that's really not on the top of the list as far as people, like when you're interviewing those type of questions, but it's something that I would definitely look into because it is super important.
Yeah, there's some of the top agents in the country was just in my news talking about how it's deceptive that people join a team and say they did $100 million in business. And it's Josh Altman was commenting about it, how Josh Altman said it's hurting our industry, that these people are doing fake production, and it's hurting the industry. Yep. And once again, the consumers are going, wait a minute, I know that person. He didn't do that much business, right? So then on the flip side, you see these team members that don't do any business saying they did 100 million. That's also deceptive, because the consumers and it actually hurts their things, because they're like, wait a minute, I know you. You didn't do $100 million in business. You didn't sell 300 homes. I know you. So they're hurting their sphere of influence on that too. Yep. And then back to your comment about the agent that's been there 3 or 4 years. So they've been there 3 or 4 years. They leave. That's even worse than someone starting with no deals. Because when you first start, you can tell your clients, oh, I just started, so I'm learning, but this is what, dude, you've been doing this for 3 or 4 deals. You don't have, I had to put them in someone else's name. Well, why? That's even worse than having to explain that. Yeah. And that's why the practice shouldn't be, like Josh Altman said, I agree with him. If you don't touch the consumer, then you should not have that production under your name. Yep. That's what he said in the Inman Report. That's a good indication. We never did this in the past. Crazy this stuff came up, that this stuff is happening now, and for different reasons. But like I said, if you're on a team, and here's another thing, with the leads getting cut, from all the portals, right? Yeah. There's half the listings. There's going to be, less leads, probably half the leads. Well, if you're on a team of 10 or 20 and those leads are getting cut and you're 17, 18, 19, or 15, well, you wanted to stay, but now you can't. I mean, you can stay, but there's not enough leads for you. Well, how are you gonna help yourself in your career? So all team leaders should see what's going on right now and start giving those productions back to the people that earned them.
Absolutely. Great insight as always, man. I want to say it's been an honor to have you on. Like I said, one of my best friends in the world.
Thanks, brother,
and
mutual.
just always been a mecca in the real estate industry.
You're a mecca now.
And a large part because of you, sir. So thank you very much.
All you, brother.
But thanks for coming on, my man. Appreciate you.
Yeah.